Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world, with me, Deepika, coming up in the next 1 hour. Russian President Putin says Moscow's response to strikes will be serious and overwhelming, expresses willingness to continue dialogue with the United States.
This is an attempt to escalate, but if these weapons are used to strike on Russia, the response will be very serious. I should even say overwhelming.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy heads to London for discussions with key allies. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister says he would press a meeting of the coalition of the willing countries. In her first policy speech, Japan's new Prime Minister vows to accelerate 2% defense spending target, says military activities of neighboring countries have become a grave concern. Representatives of the US, Saudi Arabia, UAE and Egypt to meet in Washington on Friday with a focus on implementing a 3-month nationwide humanitarian truce in Sudan. An Indian women's cricket team enters semi-finals of the ongoing Women's Cricket World Cup. Rawal hits maiden century, Mandhana hits 14th ODI ton. Good afternoon to all the viewers joining us at this afternoon broadcast. To begin with the latest, Russian President Vladimir Putin warned on Thursday that Moscow's response to any strikes deep inside Russia would be very serious and overwhelming. Now, his remarks came a day after US President Donald Trump, who recently called Russia a paper tiger, announced the cancellation of a planned summit with Putin. The US Treasury also imposed new sanctions on 2 of Russia's largest oil companies. Addressing reports that Washington had eased restrictions on Ukraine's use of long-range Western missiles and President Zelensky's comments about developing domestic weapons with a 3,000 kilometers range, Putin said such moves were an attempt to escalate, warning that attacks on Russian territory would invite a powerful retaliation.
This is an attempt to escalate, but if these weapons are used to strike on Russia, the response will be very serious. I should even say overwhelming. Let them think about it.
Despite the tensions, Putin emphasized that Moscow have always supported dialogue with Washington and still does. He said Trump's decision to cancel the summit appeared to be a postponement rather than a complete cancellation, adding, dialogue is always better than confrontation.
The US president has decided to cancel or postpone this meeting. More likely, he is talking about postponing it. What can we say? Dialogue is always better than any confrontation.
Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed the possibility of a rescheduling and said Trump wants any future talks with Putin to produce a tangible positive outcome.
Between these two leaders is not completely off the table. I think the president and the entire administration hopes that one day that can happen again, but we want to make sure that there's a tangible positive outcome out of that meeting and that it's a good use of the president's time.
Now, European leaders pledged on Thursday to cover Ukraine's financial needs in 2026 and 2027, but stopped short of approving a plan that would draw from frozen Russian assets to do so after Belgium raised objections. Now, European Union leaders met in Brussels on Thursday to discuss Ukraine's pressing financial needs for the next 2 years. Many leaders had hoped the talks would clear the way for a so-called reparation loan, which would use frozen Russian assets held by the Belgian financial institution Euroclear to fund a loan of 140 billion euros for Ukraine. The European Union froze about 200 billion euros of Russian central bank assets after the country launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine back in the year 2022. In order to use the assets to fund Ukraine, the European Commission, the European Union's executive, has floated a complex financial maneuver that involves the European Union borrowing matured funds from Euroclear.
European leaders committed to ensure that Ukraine's financial needs will be covered for the next 2 years. We have asked the Commission to put forward options as soon as possible, so that Ukraine has the resources it needs to continue defending itself and fight for a just and lasting peace in 2026 and 2027 if it's necessary.
We agreed on the what, that is the reparations loan, and we have to work on the how we make it possible, what is the best option to move forward.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy heads to London for discussions with key allies. Now, Britain on Friday called for a raft of measures against Russia to strengthen Ukraine's hand ahead of any future peace talks. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's office said he would press a meeting of the coalition of the willing countries that have pledged to strengthen support for Ukraine to take Russian oil and gas off the global market, use frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine, and give Kyiv more long-range missiles. And now to get you more on this, I'm joined by DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh. Good afternoon, Shubhendu. Now, considering Trump's stand on this war and European Union's intention, how do you assess Putin's reaction to this developing situation, Shubhendu?
Deepika, good afternoon. Well, we're looking at Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterating, in fact, the red lines, the actions that he considers as red lines from the West, particularly the access first and then the use of long-range missiles by Ukraine provided by the Western allies. And this is happening while the Western allies, Europe and the United States, appear divided in the manner in which they intend to support Ukraine in the conflict ahead. We saw that the Brussels conference was aimed at providing, ideally, the Russian frozen assets to Ukraine in the form of loan or in the form of liquidity. But either of the solutions could not work out. There are quite clear legal issues associated with it in the manner in which one can handle frozen assets of another country. As a result, what we saw was a certain blanket statement of support saying that European Union is going to be taking care of what it says, financial needs of Ukraine for the next couple of years. And this comes just after a certain disappointment for Ukrainian President Zelenskyy in Washington, D.C. We had gone hoping to receive Tomahawk missiles to be able to have that sort of strategic advantage against the adversary in the battlefield, but President Trump turned that down. What he did was apply his first against Russian oil companies, sanctions that he applied against the major Russian oil companies. So we see certain actions being taken by the West to put Russia under pressure, but there are clear divisions in the manner in which what Ukraine wants and what the West is delivering. All eyes now on what happens in London, where we see once again, we've seen the rhetoric of what Prime Minister Starmer had said, greater support for Ukraine, but we'll have to wait and watch what happens there.
Also tell us, what are we expecting from Zelensky's London visit, which Putin would also be closely watching before going ahead for an expected meeting with Donald Trump?
Most certainly, Deepika. In fact, again, the issue in question is whether the West will make available advanced long-range missiles to Ukraine to be able to target deep inside of Russia and gain some sort of strategic advantage, or even put Russia under pressure, even while talks about a potential ceasefire are taking place. We don't know of any likely meeting between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin. One that was expected earlier in Budapest was called off, and then Trump, in fact, reverted with sanctions against Russian oil companies. But the White House has given feelers that the potential meeting is not completely called off. It could happen at a later date at a suitable time. But for now, things appear in flux. All parties appear to be pushing for ceasefire, but then they not seem to be moving in the same direction. And all eyes on London, where the decision whether finally Ukraine will have access to some advanced long-range missiles or not. Russia is keeping a close eye. President Putin, Kremlin has made it very clear that any access to long-range missiles with which Ukraine could target deep inside of Russia could mean serious escalation.
All right. Thank you so much, Rupendu, for joining us and giving us the latest on this. Now, US President Donald Trump said on Thursday that a report on the United States sending B-1 bombers near Venezuela to increase military pressure was false. Trump also said that his administration plans to brief the United States Congress on operations against drug cartels related to Venezuela, but that a declaration of war is not needed.
Well, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay? We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay?
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro issued a warning on Thursday, ordering the country's working class to launch a general insurrectionary strike and take up arms if the United States attempts any intervention in Venezuela. Speaking at an event in Caracas, Maduro declared that workers, peasants and fishermen would serve as the greatest shield the country has against foreign operation.
If one day they dare to come here or there, here is the greatest shield the country has, the working class. Not a pin would move, and a general insurrectionary, revolutionary strike by the working class and peasant would be declared in the streets until power was regained to carry out an even more radical revolution. Brothers and sisters, take this as an order. The order is given. If they dare, not a pin will move in this country. They would see the parade of millions of men and women with rifles in the fighting forces of the working class, the peasants, the fishermen, and the neighborhoods throughout the country.
Venezuela began a nationwide military deployment on Thursday as part of its Coast Independence 200 exercises aimed at defending the country's sovereignty and internal stability amid rising regional tensions. The drills, which span across the coastal states of La Guaira, Miranda, Azónatigi, Falcon, Nueva Esparta, Carabobo, Sucre and Zulia, were launched under the supervision of Defense Minister Vladimir Patrino Lopez, who also serves as the Vice President for Defense and Sovereignty. Now, during the deployment, Patrino warned against alleged covert operations by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, saying any attempt to destabilize Venezuela would fail. He further added that the military exercises are also a response to military threat in the Caribbean region. And now to get you more on this, I'm joined by DD India correspondent Jessica Taneja. Good afternoon, Jessica. Tell us what is the latest that you are tracking on this?
Well, as you see, the United States President Donald Trump has outrightly refuted that he sent B-2 bombers. But what we do know is that there are various military assets deployed in the Caribbean right now, and the situation seems quite tense at this point. And you have the regional, countries as well, which have sort of said expressively that they do not support this kind of military intervention by the United States, while the United States claims that this is a war against narco-terrorism. And perhaps we've seen in the recent past the kind of vessels that have been shot down by U.S. airstrikes. Earlier, the convention was slightly different, so it has drawn some criticism from a few analysts across the world, as well as the United Nations, where the agencies seem to suggest that this is being dealt with a completely different manner. But for the administration, it is all about controlling that narco trade that continues to bother the United States and its borders and halts its trade. Now, if you see the kind of regional security that is being destabilized at this point, with concerns that have been expressed from countries like Brazil and Mexico, And on the other hand, the Maduro-led government right now in Venezuela has sought some diplomatic support as well from Cuba and Nicaragua to that effect as well. But what we do know and what we can say is the fact that this is it's a different kind of approach towards eliminating narco-terrorism by the current administration, not very different from what Donald Trump had promised and somehow even displayed in his first term. But this level of striking of the vessels without any concern and more deployment of military vessels in the Caribbean seems to suggest that this is certainly going to go in a very different way and would see a bolstering of militarization of the Caribbean, which it hasn't seen in the recent past for quite a bit now.
All right. Thank you so much, Jessica, for getting us the latest on this. Moving on. Tensions flared in Alameda, California on Thursday as protesters clashed with police over the arrival of federal agents at local Coast Guard space. Now, President Trump reversed the course on sending federal agents to San Francisco. President's announcement on Thursday surprised many as he declared that no federal agents would be deployed to San Francisco despite earlier plans. The move comes amid ongoing debates over immigration enforcement in Democratic-led cities. Time to take a short break, but still to come on the other side. White House says U.S. shutdown could lead to holiday travel meltdown. After the break, we'll get you all the latest on upcoming elections in Argentina. And New Zealand to introduce a bill to restrict social media for children under the age of 16.
Indian industries are facing pressure because of President Trump's tariff threats.
Even tariffs are part of the story, actually. If you were to look at the whole story of the deindustrialization of India, it began in many ways under the British rule. They say, oh, it's not our fault. India fell behind because you missed the bus for the Industrial Revolution. My answer is we missed the bus is because you threw us under its wheels.
Welcome back. After that short break, you're watching DD India News Hour. Well, Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanae Takeichi, pledged on Friday to accelerate a defense spending target by 2 years as her government pursues proactive fiscal expansion on strategic priorities. In her first policy speech, Takeichi told the parliament that Japan aims to reach a defense spending goal of 2% of gross domestic product in the current fiscal year through March, ahead of the original target of fiscal 2027.
Our nation must take the initiative in radically strengthening its defense capabilities. To this end, we will act to bring forward the implementation of the 2% of GDP level within the current financial year set out in the National Security Strategy in conjunction with supplementary budgetary measures.
She's previously said that Japan is completely looked down on by China and that Tokyo must address the security threat posed by Beijing while calling for more security cooperation with Taiwan.
China is an important neighbor of Japan, and we must build a constructive and stable relationship. At the same time, it is a fact that security and economic security concerns exist between Japan and China. We will advance our strategic, mutually beneficial relationship through frank and repeated dialogue between our leaders.
The Trump administration and Republican lawmakers in Congress cautioned on Thursday that flight disruptions are likely to worsen as the government shutdown stretches into its 23rd day, leaving air traffic controllers without their first full paycheck. Now around 13,000 air traffic controllers and 50,000 transportation security administration officers are being forced to work without a pay during the shutdown. Controllers are set to miss their first complete paycheck on Tuesday. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt warned of major flight delays, disruptions and cancellations at airports nationwide during the holiday season, blaming Democrats for the ongoing impasse. Democrats, however, dismissed the accusation, insisting that it is President Donald Trump and Republican leaders who are responsible for the stalemate by refusing to engage in negotiations.
If the Democrats continue to keep the government closed, we fear there will be significant flight delays, disruptions, and cancellations in major airports across the country this holiday season. If Democrats continue to shut down the government, they will also be shutting down American air travel.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that a wealthy private donor has provided $130 million to the United States government to cover potential shortfalls in military salaries caused by the ongoing government shutdown. Speaking at a White House event, Trump praised the wealthy donor as a patriot and a friend of mine, but declined to name him. The U.S. federal government has been partially shut down since the 1st of October, as lawmakers in Congress remain deadlocked over a new budget, with disputes over healthcare subsidies at the center of the impasse.
By the way, a friend of mine, talking about donors, a friend of mine, a man that's great, I'm not going to use his name unless he lets me do it. Susie can tell you about this, but he called us the other day and he said, I'd like to contribute any shortfall you have because of the Democrat shutdown. I'd like to personally contribute any shortfall you have with the military, because I love the military and I love the country, and any shortfall, if there's a shortfall, I'll contribute it. And today he sent us a check for $130 million. I would love to tell you he doesn't really want the recognition, if you want to know the truth, but he gave us a check for $130 million, which was sort of a shortfall, yeah. And that's going to go to the military, yeah.
The White House has confirmed that President Donald Trump's $300 million ballroom project will be fully funded through private donations and his own money, with no taxpayer funds involved. Originally estimated at $200 million, the cost rose due to design changes. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the ballroom will host state visits and major events. She also assured transparency, with donor lists and Trump's contributions made public. Now, legal experts say residents can modify White House grounds without outside approval. No other renovations are planned, though Trump is keen on upgrading the complex. Moving on. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has accused certain U.S. nationals of being involved in a complex fuel smuggling network operating across the border. Responding to a report, Sheinbaum confirmed during her morning press conference that American business figures were implicated in the illegal trade. Investigators have focused on a Houston-based firm, Icon Midstream, which allegedly mislabeled diesel exports to Mexico as lubricants to avoid high import taxes. While the company has not issued a statement, Mexican security officials said it remains under active investigation. Authorities estimate that the smuggling operation may account for nearly 1/3 of Mexico's diesel market. Now, both Mexican and the U.S. governments are stepping up enforcement measures, pursuing sanctions and legal proceedings against those tied to the fuel trafficking networks.
Yes, there are US business people in the cases under investigation. It couldn't be explained how illegal fuel entered or still enters in smaller quantities without someone on the other side. In fact, the United States also mentioned it and has its own investigations, the Department of Justice itself.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping will make state visits next week to South Korea when the country hosts Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation events. South Korea's presidential security advisor said that South Korean President Lee Jae-myung plans to hold summit meetings with Trump and Xi separately. As part of a trip to Asia, Trump will meet Xi next week in South Korea, the White House said earlier, amid an escalation in trade tensions between the world's two largest economies. Before the APEC meeting, Lee will make a two-day trip to Malaysia between the 26th and 27th of October to attend a summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, also joined by Trump. On the sidelines of the ASEAN summit, Lee will talk to Cambodia's Prime Minister Hun Manet and discuss recent online scam issues. Peru's Gen Z protest movement is doubling down on its demands for political change, announcing plans to draft legislation repealing pro-crime laws while defending their constitutional right to demonstrate despite government pushback. Speaking at a press conference on Thursday, movement spokesperson declared that protesters would continue taking to the streets regardless of opposition from the authorities. The youth-led movement announced that it is working with the Lima Bar Association to draft legislation to repeal laws and restore democratic reforms. Their proposals include eliminating congressional immunity, ending lawmaker re-election, repealing the bicameral system, and restoring referendum rights. Moving on. A bill to restrict social media for children under the age of 16 will be introduced in the New Zealand Parliament, now building momentum for Parliament's efforts to prevent young people from being harmed while online. The proposed legislation will require social media platforms to conduct an age verification process, similar to Australia's world-first teen social media ban law passed in 2024. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon has been raising concerns about harms to mental health from the overuse of social media among young teens, including misinformation, bullying, and harmful depictions of body image. Argentines will head to the polls on Sunday in crucial midterm elections that will decide the future of President Javier Milei's tough economic reforms. Milei's party hopes to gain seats in Congress to push forward labor, tax, and pension changes. While inflation has dropped, social costs have sparked mixed reactions. Opposition leader Axel, governor of Buenos Aires province, closed his campaign with strong criticism of Milei's US-backed bailout and economic policies, accusing the government of turning Argentina into a casino. He vowed to block Milei's austerity agenda in Buenos Aires, calling for more rights and social justice. The vote will fill half the chamber of the deputies and a third of the Senate, shaping Argentina's political future and testing Milei's grip on the power. Moving on. President Aizana Osan Ouattara closed campaign in Abidjan ahead of Saturday's presidential election in Ivory Coast. Now, at the age of 83, he's expected to win a fourth term, helped by the exclusion of key rivals Laurent Gbagbo and Thiam. Gbagbo called the vote a civilian coup and urged protests. Tensions are rising, with 4 deaths reported in recent unrest and an electoral office set on fire. Authorities have banned opposition rallies, citing safety concerns. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world in brief. After torrential rains in Taipei, Malaysia, residents found themselves trapped in flooded homes on Thursday. With roads inundated and vehicles partially submerged, many used rafts to move around. Local authorities launched their disaster response on Thursday evening as conditions worsened across several districts in northern Perak state. Western Australia's Christmas Island witnessed a spectacular sight this week as millions of red crabs emerged from the island's interior for their annual migration to the ocean. Protected by law, these unique crabs journey to mate, with females later laying up to 100,000 eggs in the sea, while males return to the island, marking one of nature's most incredible events. The annual Key West Pet Masquerade in Key West, Florida, drew hundreds of spectators during the 10-day Fantasy Fest celebration. With the theme Bedtime Stories and Magical Monsters, dogs, cats and horses wore creative Halloween costumes, and the event raised funds for the Monroe County Sheriff's Office Animal Farm to support rescued animals. Now, Dark Secrets, the esoteric exhibition in London, opened since October the 11th, explores the global history of the occult and supernatural ahead of Halloween. Featuring over 1,000 objects, it includes cursed dolls, a vampire hunting kit, and Shua shrunken heads. The exhibition also exposes fraudulent mediums and highlights Halloween's pagan origins with Druid artifacts. It runs until the 2026 May month. Time to take a short break, but still to come on the other side. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses Rozgar Mela, says appointments made today are active contributions to the nation building. After the break, we'll get you a special report on United Nations Day.
Can the US launch a bombing campaign against Iran? The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you.
And remember to save your country.
You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on DD India.
Welcome back after that short break. You're watching the India News Hour. Time to quickly recap top headlines of the hour. Russian President Putin says Moscow's response to strikes will be serious and overwhelming, expresses willingness to continue dialogue with the United States. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy heads to London for discussions with key allies. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister says he would press a meeting of coalition of willing countries. An Indian women's cricket team enters semi-finals of the ongoing Women's Cricket World Cup. Pratika Rawal hits maiden century. Mandhana hits 14th ODI ton. The United Nations Day is being celebrated today. It marks the founding of the United Nations 80 years ago with the UN Charter, signed by major signatories and 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council on the 26th of June back in the year 1945 and coming into force on the 24th of October in the same year. Here's more.
October 24th marks United Nations Day, commemorating the founding of an organization that continues to symbolize hope, unity, and the shared aspirations of humanity. Since its inception in 1945, the United Nations has served as a platform for nations to resolve conflicts, foster development, and uphold peace. Throughout this journey, India has remained one of its most steadfast partners, contributing both in spirit and in action. India stands among the top contributors to UN peacekeeping, with over 5,000 personnel serving across continents. From maintaining ceasefire to delivering humanitarian aid, Indian peacekeepers have earned a reputation for courage, discipline, and compassion.
Our soldiers ensure peacekeeping, our sailors protect maritime shipping, our security counters terrorism, our doctors and teachers facilitate human development the world over, Our industry produces affordable products. Our techies promote digitization, and our training facilities are open to the world. These remain the core of our foreign policy.
However, the question of reform of the United Nations and its Security Council has come up at a time when the world grapples with multiple conflicts. Speaking at the 80th UN General Assembly this year, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar posed a question that resonated deeply across the global stage.
We must ask ourselves today, how has the UN lived up to expectations? And just look at the state of the world.
As the UN celebrates 8 decades of existence, its relevance rests not only in reflection but in renewal. Bureau Report, DD India.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar today released a commemorative postage stamp during an event in New Delhi to mark the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. The stamp, designed through a national competition that saw nearly 7.4 lakh student entries, celebrating India's enduring commitment to the UN's ideal of peace, equality and human dignity. The event also celebrated India's post-historical association with the United Nations, showcasing their collaborative efforts in promoting global cooperation and sustainable development. The commemorative stamp stands as a symbol of hope and unity, reflecting the youth's vision for a peaceful and connected world. Dr. S. Jaishankar reaffirmed India's commitment to peace, security and development, emphasizing that India will continue to be a strong supporter of the United Nations and multilateralism.
On UN Day, I would like to reiterate India's commitment to the ideals of peace and security, as well as development and progress. India has always been and will continue to be a strong votary of the United Nations and indeed of multilateralism. Our commitment to global peace and security is reflected, amongst others, in our staunch support for peacekeeping, and I'm very glad that the first day cover captures that particular facet as well.
He also underlined that the UN's decision-making no longer reflects global realities, stressing the need for meaningful reforms to ensure the organization remains effective, representative and relevant.
We must also recognize that all is not well with the United Nations. Its decision-making neither reflects its membership nor addresses global priorities. Its debates have become increasingly polarized and its working visibly gridlocked. Any meaningful reform is obstructed using the reform process itself.
Speaking at the inauguration of the new CGST building in Ghaziabad, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman highlighted the success of recent GST reforms. The Finance Minister said that the markets noted a 25% rise in Diwali sales this year, reaching a record high of 6.05 lakh crore rupees, of which 87% of the purchases were of Indian-made goods, reflecting growing public confidence in domestic products and the Modi government's Swadeshi vision.
The Confederation of All India Traders, CAIT, KAIT as they call it, has said retail sales hit an all-time high of 6.05 lakh crores this year. This is about a 25% increase over the last year's Diwali sales, which was around 4.25 lakh crores. Of the total, about 5.40 lakh crores was spent on goods and 65,000 crores on services, making it the biggest Deepavali business in India's trading history. Equally importantly, this Swadeshi Deepavali saw an overwhelming preference for made in India products. Roughly 87% of all that customers choose or chose to buy the Indian made goods over imports.
India takes a major stride towards tech self-reliance, with GX Group launching a new venture to develop advanced photonics chips and modules for next-generation broadband, 5G, 6G and quantum communication. The project comes with an initial 500 crore rupees investment backed by Invest International from Netherlands and in partnership with Smart Photonics BV, a global leader in indium phosphide-based photonic circuits. Speaking exclusively to DD India correspondent Taposh Bhattacharya, Paritosh Prajapati, who is the CEO of GX Group, said the goal is to place India firmly on the global photonics map. Take a listen.
India is on the cusp of a photonic revolution, and to lead that bandwagon is Paritosh Prajapati, the CEO of GX Groups.
This is one way of communication. Everything has been electronic based before. Now we're going into lighting speed. That's where we bring the new technology. There are a lot of data communication center will be built up in India coming years. We want to be part of that journey with a technology which is designed and built in India. Right now, most of the things, approximately or more than 90%, is imported to India right now.
Right. And you guys are also partnering with Netherlands-based companies that actually will also, it's basically what you call India-Netherlands partnership in that same segment.
Yes, we are doing that since Netherlands is one of the country front-running in this technology when it comes to chipset and photonics technology. And bringing the technology transfer to India will help us to scale up things faster.
In India, it's a approximately $50 billion industry. How do you want to go ahead and also how do you want to train engineers in India? Because it's a new industry. A lot of people in India may not know about it, especially when it comes to giving employment to them.
Yes, this is a new technology, and the thing is that the technology is merging faster than we think. As I mentioned before also, that data consumption in India drastically exponentially growing, which means the demand is increasing. And with that, talent is there. We know the talents on the communication level, but photonics will be new. We will be building up training center. We will be building up some training activities with Netherlands to bring the right technology and speeding up the knowledge here in India.
And you're also getting a 500 crore investment from Netherlands. That's going to help setting up a new setup in the country. Where are you guys setting up the business model?
The facility we're looking at the state of Rajasthan. We're looking at UP and AP right now. We will decide on the right location. As I said, this is the first initial investment. We are planning to scale up globally. That's the vision.
So make in India, make for the world.
Exactly.
So when are we seeing the first product coming out?
We will see in the next financial year our product lines will be started to support the domestic market and then scaling next phase to export market.
Much appreciated your time. So that was CEO Mr. Prajapati is telling that the next financial year they will be coming up with their new product line, and for Make in India, make for the world. With camera person Pramod Negi, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
In a recent article in an Indian daily, Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal elaborated on how the India-EFTA Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement, which came into force on the 1st of October, is a game changer for India in terms of attracting foreign investments, creating at least 1 million jobs and catalyzing Make in India mission. In the article, the minister highlighted that EFTA, which includes Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein, Iceland, have pledged an investment of $100 billion over 15 years. He also said that production-linked incentive schemes alone have drawn 1.76 lakh crore rupees in investments by March this year, spanning over 12 lakh jobs. Now, PM Gati Shakti and National Logistics Policy have also streamlined infrastructure. Not only this, Janadhan, UPI and Trade Connect have democratized opportunity, powering 65,000 crore transactions worth 12,000 lakh crore rupees in 6 years. Now, EFTA's $100 billion infusion promises 1 million direct jobs and countless more indirect jobs. India records $81.04 billion FDI inflow in financial year 2024-25, marking a surge of 14%. Labour-intensive exports like gems and jewellery and textiles will also bloom, and exports of frozen shrimp, prawn and squid will increase through seamless standard cooperation. Now, India-EFTA trade agreement transcends tariffs, providing fair and transparent rules on food safety, animal and plant health, production quality and consumer protection as well. And marking a milestone in India-Germany engagement as 2025 commemorates the 25th anniversary of the India-Germany Strategic Partnership, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal held a meeting with Luxembourg's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Affairs and Trade, Xavier Bettel. The discussions focused on enhancing economic cooperation, boosting bilateral trade, and identifying new opportunities for partnership. Both the leaders also exchanged views on regional and global developments. The minister also held talks with Dr. Martin, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Herenknecht AG, on expanding the company's footprint and technology partnerships in India's infrastructure sector. Minister also met Klaus Rosenfeld, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Schaeffler AG, to strengthen cooperation in automotive, AI and advanced manufacturing. Their discussions also underlined India's growing prominence as a global hub for innovation and industry. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Rozgar Mela via video conferencing today, highlighting that the festive season has been enriched by the GST Bachat Utsav. Prime Minister noted the significant reform in GST rate reductions across the country.
नेक्स्ट जनरेशन जीएसटी रिफॉर्म से रोजगार के अवसरों का भी विस्तार मिल रहा है। जब हर रोज इस्तेमाल होने वाले सामान सस्ते होते हैं तो मांग भी बढ़ती है। जब मांग बढ़ती है तो उत्पादन और सप्लाई चेन को भी गति मिलती है। और जब फैक्ट्रियां ज्यादा उत्पादन करती हैं तो नई नौकरियां पैदा होती हैं। इसलिए ये जीएसटी बचत उत्सव रोजगार उत्सव में भी बदल रहा है। अभी हमने देखा धनतेरस, दीपावली पर जिस तरह रिकॉर्ड बिक्री हुई है, नए नए रिकॉर्ड बने, पुराने रिकॉर्ड टूटे, ये दिखाता है कि कैसे जीएसटी में हुए रिफॉर्म ने देश की अर्थव्यवस्था को नई गति दी है। एमएसएमई सेक्टर और रिटेल ट्रेड में भी हमें इस रिफॉर्म का सकारात्मक असर देखने को मिल रहा है।
Ahead of Chhath Puja, Indian Railways have strengthened arrangements to manage the festive rush. War rooms have been set up at the division, zone and railway port levels. A monitoring system which will enable real-time coordination across the country regarding the status of every station. Around 10,700 reserved and 3,000 unreserved trains have been deployed to manage the festive rush. Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw said on Thursday that the first peak in passenger surge was observed between the 17th and the 20th of October, while a second peak is expected between the 22nd and 24th of October. A permanent holding area at New Delhi railway station with a capacity for over 7,000 people, 150 toilets for men and 150 for women, offers great convenience to the passengers. On the 21st of October, 1,69,986 unreserved outward passengers boarded from the 6 major stations of Delhi area and 1,71,753 unreserved outward passengers boarded from 6 major stations of Delhi on the 22nd of October. 17 special trains operates from major stations in Delhi area today. More than 12,000 special trains being operated across India between the 1st of October and 30th of November this year. As many as 2,200 will cater to Bihar to meet the festive travel demand. And ahead of Chhath Puja, Prime Minister Narendra Modi urged the citizens to share their favourite devotional songs dedicated to Chhath Maiya, saying the melodies enhance the festival's divinity. Calling Chhath a celebration of nature and culture, he said he would share selected songs on his social media platforms in the coming days. Moving on. Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched Bihar election campaigns today from Samastipur. Prime Minister Modi paid homage to Bharat Ratna and former Bihar Chief Minister Karpuri Thakur in Bihar's Samastipur district. He also met his family members. Prime Minister Modi, accompanied by Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, Karpuri Thakur said that Karpuri Thakur is remembered for his dedication to social justice and the upliftment of marginalized communities. Later, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also addressed a public meeting at Dudhpura helipad grounds in Samastipur, invoking the legacy of socialist icon Jan Nayak Karpuri Thakur and pledging to accelerate development and social justice across the state. Addressing the gathering, Prime Minister described Karpuri Thakur as a priceless gem of the country, crediting him for bringing social justice to independent India.
जननायक कर्पूरी ठाकुर की प्रेरणा से सुशासन को समृद्धि में बदल रहे हैं, लेकिन दूसरी तरफ आरजेडी और कांग्रेस वाले क्या कह रहे हैं और क्या कर रहे हैं, ये आपको मुझसे ज्यादा पता है। मुझे आपको याद दिलाने की जरूरत नहीं है। हजारों करोड़ रुपए के घोटालों में ये जमानत पर चल रहे लोग हैं, जमानत पे। और जो जमानत पे है वो चोरी के मामले में जमानत पे है। अब ये चोरी की इनकी आदत ऐसी है कि अब जननायक की उपाधि की चोरी में जुटे हैं। बिहार के लोग जननायक कर्पूरी बाबू का ये अपमान कभी नहीं सहेंगे।
Advertising legend Piyush Pandey passed away on Friday at the age of 70. His last rites will be performed at Shivaji Park in Mumbai. Pandey served as the Chief Creative Officer worldwide and Executive Chairman India at Ogilvy. He made history as the first Asian to preside over the jury at the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity. His pioneering contributions were recognized with the Clio Lifetime Achievement Award in 2012 and Padma Shri, making him the first individual from Indian advertising to receive the prestigious national honor. Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed deep sorrow over the passing away of advertising legend Piyush Pandey. He praised Pandey's creativity and his monumental contributions to the world of advertising and communications. Expressing condolences in his X account, he said, and I quote him here, Shri Piyush Pandey was admired for his creativity. He made a monumental contribution to the world of advertising and communications. I will fondly cherish our interactions over the years, saddened by his passing away. My thoughts are with his family and admirers. Om Shanti. Unquote. Union Ministers Piyush Goyal and Nirmala Sitharaman, along with former Minister Anurag Singh Thakur, also paid tribute to the advertising icon. Moving on. Representatives of the United States, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, along with Egypt, will meet on Friday in Washington with the sides in Sudan's long-running conflict to push them towards a truce. Now, last month, the influential foreign powers, referred as the Quad, jointly called for a humanitarian truce in Sudan, followed by a permanent ceasefire and a transition towards civilian rule. This week's meeting is focused on that plan and pressing the warring parties to implement a 3-month nationwide humanitarian truce. The Quad is acting collectively to apply unified pressure on the parties to stop the fighting and allow the aid to reach civilians. The officials said the members of the grouping would meet with the two sides separately. Sudan's army-aligned government reacted coolly to the Quad's peace plan last month, rejecting the suggestion that ports if the RSF be excluded from the country's post-war political transition. And now let's get you all the latest from the world of sports. To begin with cricket, India have finally booked their place in semi-finals of the ongoing Women's Cricket ODI World Cup. In a crucial clash played on Thursday, India defeated New Zealand by 53 runs under the DLS method. Smriti Mandhana and Rawal both scored brilliantly with a century for Team India. Mandhana, who also took 3 catches in the match, was declared as the player of the match. Moving on, Australia have made a number of changes to their T20I squad for the upcoming 5-match series against India. Australia have recalled Glenn Maxwell and Ben Thurshwas to allow Test contenders to play in the Sheffield Shield before the Ashes. Josh Hazlewood will skip the last 3 games of the series, while fellow fast bowler Sean Abbott will miss the last 2. Maxwell will come in for the last 3 games, while left-arm paceman Thurshwas will be available for the last 2. Uncapped quick Meili Bedman will also join the squad for the last 3 games of a series that begins next week on Wednesday. In other changes, wicketkeeper Josh Philippe joins the squad as cover for Josh Inglis, who's still struggling with the calf problem that ruled him out of the ODI series. In tennis, Elena Rybakina clinched the 8th and last spot at next month's WTA finals when she beat Victoria Mokoko on Friday to reach the Pan-Pacific semi-finals in Tokyo. Rybakina will play 6th-seed Linda Noskova of the Czech Republic in the semi-finals on Saturday. The number 2 seed made a fast start by winning the first 3 games on the way to sealing the first set. The second was more closely contested, with Rybakina saving a set point against the 23rd ranked Mokoko before they went to a tiebreaker. With this victory, Rybakina joins Serena Sabalenka, Iga Swiatek, Coco Gauff, Amanda Anisimova, Madison Keys, Jessica Pegula and Jasmine Paolini at the second ending tournament in November. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download it right now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Deepika, and from all of us here in New Delhi, thank you so much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.